Hello and welcome back to the Truth Teller podcast. Today I'm continuing my series about marriage, and this is part 6. This will be my last episode for now about marriage, but I might come back to this if the Lord calls me to. And today we are going to be talking about what Peter writes in his book First Peter, and he has First Peter and Second Peter. But of course, it's God's word speaking through him. It's not his words per se. But anyways, First Peter is written by Peter, and Jesus, when he was on earth, he's already risen from the dead and gone up to heaven by now. But Jesus called Peter the rock that the church will be built on. Peter was originally called Simon, but then Jesus changed his name to Peter, which means rock. And so this is like during the early days of the church. Okay, let's jump right in. I am going to read 1 Peter 3, 1 through 7, and this is the NIV version. It says, "Wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives, when they see your purity and reverence of your lives. Your beauty should not come from the outward adornment, such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. For this is the way the holy women of the past, who put their hope in God, used to adorn themselves. They submitted themselves to their own husbands, like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her Lord. You are her daughters if you do what is right and do not give way to fear. Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect as the weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers." So that is the big chunk that we're going to be talking about today. It's not that big, but I'm going to reread verses 1 through 2, and then we're going to break that down. So verses 1 through 2 says, "Wives, in the same way, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that if any of them do not believe the word, they may be won over without words by the behavior of their wives, when they see the purity and reverence of your lives." Okay, so the word submit is often used in the Bible to refer to women, and women take that wrong. But if you heard in my last episodes, submit does not mean what we think it means, but it means to arrange under, to yield. So when it says to submit to your husband, it's saying to submit to your husband to show him what it means to submit to Christ. We're supposed to be example. He would be won over by the way of our purity, so that we are following God's commands and showing what it means to really follow God and reflect his goodness, to really just show people who he is. And that's the greatest thing. Like, you don't even have to be a pastor. You can preach a sermon, not even with saying words. You can do it with your actions. And that's an amazing gift God gave us, and we shouldn't take that for granted. Next section is 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 through 4. "Your beauty should not come from outward adornment such as elaborate hairstyles and the wearing of gold jewelry or fine clothes. Rather, it should be that of your inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight." So, I know, being a girl, that girls worry, or girl or a woman, whatever, they worry so much about their appearance and like what others think about them by their looks. And that's just the way society has made people, and that's an awful way to think about yourself. God made you beautiful in his eyes. He formed you by hand. He did not just speak you into existence like the rest of the creation. He formed you by hand, so he made you beautiful. And when you call yourself not beautiful, he's hurt because he loves how he made you. So don't hurt yourself. And so God made you beautiful, and that's all that matters. And what I like to think about is audience for one. we are not living to please other people or like doing stuff for them so that they would like us. We should only be living for God, to glorify him, and only care about what he thinks of us. And if he thinks that we're not doing enough, then we should think differently and not worry about what other people think of us, because that doesn't matter in the end. um and also, don't put up a fake self because you are scared of being hurt. I know it's really hard, like when you first start getting a boyfriend, or like you're in marriage, and you put up a fake self to seem different so that they'll like you better, but you can't hold that forever, and that would be so hard to hold that, and it just hurts yourself. God has the perfect person out there for you, and you don't need to change yourself for someone else. The right guy will love you for who God made you to be. So, um, don't stand on your tippy toes. Okay. So, I know that when everyone was little kids, like they had that growth chart thing. Like the measuring thing on the wall, and you would stand up to it and you would compare with your siblings if you had siblings. If you're an only child, you probably don't understand this, but if you had siblings, you would compare your height with your sibling, and you would always want to be taller than each other. So then you would stand on your tippy toes to be taller than them. So what you're doing is you're faking to be better when you're really not better. You're still the same. Um, and also, if you're just walking around on your tippy toes, you can't walk around forever because it's going to be painful. So that's what it's like when we're putting up a fake self, is that we are trying, we think we'll be better, but we're already perfect how God made us to be. We've all sinned and fallen short of the glory of God, but God thinks we're all beautiful. So don't fake anything, because you're not better and you're not worse than anybody. And also, with that, is that a lot of couples live with each other before they're married. It's kind of like a trial run before they're married to see how it works before committing to that. And a lot of those relationships just end because they're like, oh, it's too hard. And God did not call us to test our partner. That's not what it's meant to be. When we're married, we are showing that we trust them and we love them, and we are going to stick with them through it all. And it's even harder when you're living together before you're married, and then you can easily just break up and it ruins everything. So don't do that. That's not what God meant you to be. Um okay, moving on. Next verse is verse 5. For this is the way the holy women of the past who put their hope in God used to adorn themselves. They submitted themselves to their own husbands. If you're like me, you don't know what adorn means, so I had to look it up. And according to Google, it means to make more attractive. And going back to girls, we always are trying to please other people. We're always trying to look amazing, you know? So holy women of the past, they had the same struggles as us. They wanted to be more attractive. They wanted their boyfriends, their husbands to like them. But holy women of the past made themselves more attractive by, one, submitting to their husband, and two, having a spirit that reflected God. Um, okay, verse 6. I gotta find it. Like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her Lord, you are her daughters if you do what is right and do not give way to fear. So, Sarah was Abraham's wife, and if you don't know who Abraham is, kind of just a quick overview, he's kind of the one who had a vision from God, and God showed him, well, God told him to look at the stars and count them, and that's how many your descendants will be. So that's Abraham. And so Sarah, her original name was Sarai. Abraham's name used to be Abram, but they got changed. So the word Sarah means princess. And that is important because she is a princess, but she is submitting to her husband. As it says, like Sarah, who obeyed Abraham and called him her Lord. She submitted to Abraham even though she knew her worth, even though she knew she's a child of God, she still respected her husband because he's also a child of God. Um and she was also, one thing about Abraham is that God told him to move around a lot. And she was not fearful. Well, she probably was a little bit, but she trusted God. She was not fearful when God told Abraham to move, because she had to move with Abraham. She couldn't just stay. But she trusted God. She helped her husband do what God wanted him to. She helped him. She didn't hold him back and saying, "No, I can't go," or like, "No, are you sure God is telling you to do this?" Like Job's wife, who told him to curse God and die. She was not helpful. But anyway, Sarah trusted God to lead Abraham correctly. So that's what it means when it says, "You are her daughters if you do what is right and do not give way to fear." Um, Last verse is verse 7. Husbands, in the same way, be considerate as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect as the weaker partner and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers. So that's it again. When you live with your wives, not girlfriends, not fiancés, not betrothed girls or whatever, like wives. Anyways, going back to the verse, the weaker partner. What it means by that, which girls would probably being offended right now, like, we're not weaker, but yes. Well, back then, um, at that time in that culture, wives could not do anything without a husband in that culture because they couldn't get a job. They couldn't really like survive without a man. And so that's why it says to treat them with respect as the weaker partner, even though they couldn't help out as much. I mean, they had to take care of the kids, but even though they couldn't work, they still had to treat them with respect because they also have the gift that God gave them. So when it says heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, we are all equal with salvation. No one is less or more. And then when it says so that nothing will hinder your prayers, a lot of people when the Bible says pray for your enemies, they might think, oh, pray for them to be better. Like if you see someone who's driving bad, then and you call them your enemy, and then you pray to God and you're like, God, please help this person to be a better driver. That's not what it means by pray for your enemies. It means to pray for their well-being, not for them to do something for you. This is not about you. This is about them. This is about God above all. Your marriages should be about God above all. That's all I have to say today. Thank you for listening. I hope you join me again, and I hope the rest of your day is blessed.